Christ is risen. Christ is risen. Christ is risen. Now, come on, church. Don't you realise it's Easter Sunday morning? You know what the response is. I didn't hear any response from that at all. I say Christ is risen, and you respond with, He is risen indeed. It's not complicated. You've been doing it for years, so let's try that again, shall we? Okay. Christ is risen. Christ is risen. Christ is risen. Hallelujah. Happy Easter to every one of you. Happy Easter to all of you at Erskine Family Church. And to anybody else listening via the website or YouTube on this Easter Sunday morning, I want to say good morning to you all. And to those who maybe are listening for the first time ever, taking an interest in, well, what else is there to do? You know, there's a lot going on at the moment. People doing things that they've never done before. You know, I've never stood on my doorstep clapping before. I've seen whole families dancing in the street during the day and jogging past my house at night. Yeah, even the most technophobic of us older folk are now online shopping and FaceTiming, zooming in on video chatting, and I have to admit it, I've finally succumbed to joining Facebook. After years and years of resisting it, I've finally joined. Not that I could get my head around it yet. I'm still utterly confused as to how to find friends and get messages, but I'll probably get there in the end. Yeah, there's all sorts of strange things going on in these days. But that's all the lighter side of what we are facing at this time. For some, especially those on the front line of this horrendous epidemic, it's all very, very different. Those who are caring for patients in the NHS and in the other care professions, and those who are seeing loved ones taken seriously ill overnight. Those men and women, young and old, who've actually contracted this virus and are struggling day in and day out just to get sufficient oxygen into their lungs to stay alive. For these people, they are facing fearful, heart-wrenching situations. Places and situations and circumstances that they've never found themselves in before, and where they feel helpless to do anything to solve their crisis, to have any real influence over the outcome of it all. You know, those are the toughest of times for any of us, when we feel helpless to help. When all of the usual props and supports in our lives are taken away from us. When even the experts in the medical profession, God bless them, have yet no antidote or miracle drug or mind-blowing surgery that they can perform as they so often do. Even they don't have the answers at this time. And when we find ourselves in such a desperate situation, we'll often turn to prayer. Right now as I speak, right now as you listen to my words, people all around the world who've maybe never prayed before in their lives are crying out for help. They might not understand what it is that they're doing, but who cares? When you are desperate enough, you will cry out for any help that you might get. Even if you don't believe in God or some greater force, you still cry out in the hope that somebody is hearing, that somebody's listening, that somebody could do something about your situation. You know, I want you to know, folks, that that's okay. That's okay. God can handle that. It's not a problem for God. If you even now are one of those who feel you've reached the end of your tether, you just can't cope with this grief and this pain and this suffering any longer, then you cry out to God. Cry out to Him. Why do I say that? Well, let me give you very quickly 3 good reasons why you should. First of all, He's listening. He is listening. In fact, He actually invites us to come to Him in prayer. In Jeremiah chapter 33 and verse 3, a verse very precious to my heart, given to me at my baptism when I was just 18 years old. God says, call unto me and I will answer thee and show you great and mighty things which you know not. He invites us to call out to us. And secondly, He understands our pain and suffering. He does. He knows only too well what you are going through. Easter time, when we celebrating Good Friday's just gone by, and the day when we remember the ordeal of a Roman whipping and crucifixion. And Jesus went through all of that and gave Himself freely because He knew that the sacrifice needed to be made in order to give us access to God. In order for us to be able to pray and to reach God, Jesus went to the cross at Calvary. And still today, He calls out to all people everywhere, whatever race, creed and colour you may come from. Jesus still calls out today, as He did and is recorded in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 11 and verses 28 to 30. He says, come unto me, all you that are labouring, that are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus reaches out, as He did at Calvary on Good Friday, with His hands outstretched, His arms outstretched to the whole world. He still says today, come to me, all you who are struggling and heavy laden. Don't matter who you are, just come to me. Come to me, cry out to me. So we can pray because He's listening, and we can pray because He understands what we're going through. And thirdly, we can pray because He promises to answer. He promises to answer. In fact, Jesus said it Himself to His disciples. Just as He was about to go to the cross and they were sat around a table having that Last Supper together, He spoke to them about many, many things. He prayed to the Father, and he spoke to them about prayer. And he made a promise. He says, once I've returned to heaven, then you can come straight through in prayer to the Father, asking in my name, and the Father will answer. When we look at John 16:22 to 24, Jesus said these things. He said to those disciples, so you have sorrow now, but I will see you again. Here comes the promise. Then you will rejoice, and no one can rob you of that joy. At that time, you won't need to ask me for anything. I'll tell you the truth. You'll ask the Father directly, and he will grant your request because you use my name. You haven't done this before, but now do it. And maybe you listening to this today haven't done it before, but Jesus says, do it, ask, using my name, and you will receive, and you will have abundant joy. That's a promise from Jesus. So, why pray? Well, many will say that even though they do not normally have much to do with God and church, when they prayed, it brought them a great relief, a great peace. Well, if that were all that came from it, then surely that's good in itself. But I'm here to tell you this Easter morning that Jesus did rise from the dead. That 40 days later he did return to the Father in heaven. And now, even today, in 2020, in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, true to his word, Jesus is there listening and understanding and answering his promise to answer every prayer that we utter. These are strange days that we're living in. We're all having to adapt quickly to new lifestyles, at least for a while. But how will you look back on this time? Will it be just the stuff of nightmares? Maybe some new activity you've gotten into, like family jogging or street dancing, that maybe they become part of life after Corona, because there will be life after Corona. Or maybe, just maybe, you might enter in to a new life that's been transformed because you learned how to pray. And in so doing, you met with the risen Jesus of the first Easter. Every blessing upon you and your household. Bye for now.